Hi, everyone. My name is Brooke Clayman. I am an instructional coach in the Office of School Quality. So is Emily. I am at, where am I? Laburnum Elementary and Donahoe Elementary.
Yeah, and I'm Emily McMillan. I'm Brooke's other half of the School Quality Instructional Coaching team in elementary, and I serve Glenlee Elementary and Highland Springs Elementary, or the Achievable Dream Academy. Talking earlier, it seems like we already have some elementary folks on, which is awesome. As we're going along today, yes, you're muted and all of that during the recording. Brooke's going to kind of ask some questions here in a minute that you can dump in the chat. And if there's stuff that pops into your brain because we are such a small group, please put it in the chat. Like, we want this to be a place where we're meeting your needs and we're just getting to know you as well. Because you're here to support your students as they participate in this virtual classroom environment that we're all learning and growing with together. So thank you for that amazing work you're doing for your kids. We're going to have 3 major goals today. Hopefully, as I'm stating these objectives or goals for this session, you're like, yes, this is exactly what I need. If not, let us know. And we want to fumble through it with you. Our first big goal that we're going to talk through is, how do you prep the learning environment for your kid? And this learning environment in this place is your physical learning environment in your home or in your child's daycare or wherever they are actually engaged in their virtual learning. After we talk through some best practices for prepping that learning environment, we're going to talk about how you can actually check in on your kids' learning progress, because this is a whole new way of learning that we didn't experience when we were in school ourselves growing up. So what does that look like, and how do we ensure that our kids are actually learning in this environment? And then finally, and this is probably the hardest for all of us as we're watching kids under our care learn, is how do we support the productive struggle, the real learning process? Because without productive struggle, we're not really going to have great learning happening. And that's super hard right now.
Yeah, and really quickly, so as instructional coaches, Emily and I have the benefit of being in classrooms all day and trying to help teachers problem solve and figure out these things. And we don't have all the answers, but there are some things that hopefully you can gain from this session, and we're hoping we can gain some things from you guys too. So I'd like to set the norms. So that being said, this is a place of psychological safety. So we want you to feel comfortable sharing your concerns without any negative consequences. This is a place of trust, empathy. We're all doing it together. Clear communication and a mutual respect. So as Emily said, we would love to hear what you hope to get from our time together today. So we'd like you to take a moment when you can, type out what you wish to get from our session today. Hopefully we will address this. And if not, we have that and we can get that for you another time too.
Awesome. It looks like we have a few people putting things in the chat, which is fabulous. And as things come to mind, please let us know. Again, we're learning together. And just in the past, I guess, 3 weeks that we've done this together, we've all learned a ton. Tips to better support overwhelmed parents, 100%. We'll get to that, especially when it comes to how to balance all of that and your kids' constant cries for help, learning help, all of that. Yes, you'll definitely get some things you can implement this week, hopefully. Fabulous. So as we're thinking about how to make this virtual learning real and how to make it real in a way that your kid is getting the most out of the learning on the screen, right, from their phenomenal teacher, but also balancing the fact that you have your full-time job or your full-time workload and running your household and maybe multiple children too, right? There's lots of it. Step 1 is going to be to prepare that learning environment. When we talk through preparing the learning environment, this might sound crazy as we're thinking about, because entering homes is all of a sudden we have this looking glass into our homes in a way that we never have had before. And we want to make sure that our kids are as successful as possible. So thing number 1 is to limit the distractions. We have found so much over the past weeks that your kids and your learners are so excited to share answers, to share their learning with their teachers, to build community with their classmates, to start to get to know people's names and connect. But if there's a TV going in the background or a radio, or even at the beginning of this session, Brooke called me out because somebody was in my kitchen cooking and she could hear it. As soon as you unmute and for your kid to share, they hear all of that in the background, which makes not only their learning hard to share, but hard with the rest of the kids. So limiting those distractions is going to be like first and foremost in that learning environment. At the beginning of the day, just turn off those devices, or if there are other devices on because it's home and it's hard sometimes, or if there's someone in the kitchen cooking, talk to your student's teacher about the times when it really does need to be quiet so they can interact. For our lower elementary friends, like our K1, 2 people and our pre-K 2, there's a lot of building language acquisition, right? As we're learning how to read, we're thinking about like phonemes and sounds and all of that, which teachers want to hear the kids say it, and we want to see their mouths saying it. They need to interact with the screen. So if we know that that's the time of day that they need to be unmuted and talking a lot, help them go find like a quiet place in a hallway or behind a couch or wherever it is that they can interact and still let their teacher and students hear them. Sometimes too, when we're limiting the distractions, putting headphones on helps a ton, because then you don't have the, adult and children thing that happens in our lives of when there are people cooking or a TV's on or a radio's on or their high school brother and sisters listening to something, that they're tuned into that instead of the learning on the screen. And if you have a preschool or kindergarten or a secondary middle schooler or high schooler, you can put on backgrounds as well, which will kind of allow so other kids don't see the other things happening in your house that could distract another kid on a screen. So for preparing the learning environment, step 1, limit those distractions.
And then step 2 is to prepare the student workspace daily. And why do we do this? To maximize that learning time. It is a long day, especially for the younger students, but it's not as long as it would be in the classroom. So one thing that I'm suggesting to a lot of my teachers and that they've done successfully is at the end of each day, tell the parents what materials they will need ready for the next day. If they need crayons, if they need pencils, they need their math journal, whatever it is for the next day. So the parents can help the child prepare those materials, have it set out so that when they log on at 7:55, it's all ready for them. They're not looking for those items. And if your student's teacher does not share that, you could, number 1, suggest it. Number 2, ask. Say, what materials am I going to have ready for my student so that I can be successful tomorrow, or that the student can. And that also includes like the tech tools that they may be using, certain apps they may be using so that they know how to get there. I know Emily and I have been in classroom, we're teaching, preschool, kindergarten, first grade, how to add a new tab. And I think we're finally there. But a lot of our lessons were just how to navigate things. So ensuring that you have those ready beforehand is super helpful. And we kind of already went through identifying that workspace. Then there's this virtual class tips for students. This is very helpful. This is K-12, I guess, but what to do before class, during class, and after class. I particularly like the after class, thanks Emily, because of that reflection piece too. What did I learn today? How do I know that I learned it? And that sort of thing. So we're gonna go over that after class piece in the part where we are supporting the productive struggle. So yeah.
Any questions, concerns, issues, like as you're thinking through this, like, oh yeah, I am setting up a really great learning environment for my kid, or like, ooh, I keep running into this problem. I know we're muted for the recording, but if you want to dump those into the chat too, we can kind of help brainstorm solutions for that as well. Yeah. Because this is a brand new way to learn and we're very aware of that. So feel free to like psychological safety. Don't sit there with your stress. We'd rather like take it with you and like at least try to like brainstorm through it.
And maybe we can address it at the question time too. We'd love to hear what's working for you because you're on the other side of the screen. We're not right beside kids with a Chromebook or an iPad watching their virtual class. So we'd love to hear from you guys too.
So your learning environment is prepared. So then it's time to check in on the learning process. As we're thinking about this learning process, like how do you actually know if your kid is learning, right? How do you actually know what it is that your kid's teacher wants them to do? Because there's all these like new words and like you're not sitting next to your kid all day, makes total sense. Step one, and Joseph really hit upon this at the beginning, is understanding your student's schedule. It is hard, and it is hard for me over a decade in as an elementary school teacher to retrain my body always coming back from summer, when you can like get up and get a snack whenever you want, you can go on a walk whenever you want, you can use the restroom whenever you want, like all of that, to retrain myself to like, no, I need to get through learning and from my standpoint, teaching, right? And now it's time for a restroom break, or like, oh, it's finally lunchtime and all of that. And that's really important right now as well, as you're mimicking the same language from the parent or grown-up side that a teacher is on the other screen. It is hard to remember, like, no, you need to sit there and listen for a minute before it's time to go to the restroom. But by really pushing your student to stick to that schedule, and like when your teacher said it's time for a brain break, or she puts on music to dance, or like gives them a break to use the restroom or get a snack, then not only is it teaching your kid like that schedule piece, right, that self-control piece, but it's also supporting the learning of everybody else in the classroom. Because if we're getting up to do like snacks and restroom and everything whenever we all feel like it, or like our body needs it, then kids come back in and they ask what's happening. And then we're doing this like reiteration of directions, reiteration of lessons, which is awesome because you have these amazing, loving, benevolent teachers that want to do that with kids. But on the flip side of that, then we're not getting through as much. And then we're also having like more kids sitting, waiting, antsy for all of it. So definitely understand your kid's schedule. Understand that like at break time, tell them to get up and go have a break. Don't just sit there then. Like if they need to do a walk or like around their living room 4 times, let them walk around and then sit back down to really help with that. If you haven't seen your kid's schedule, reach out to your teacher. And if you need us to help or support you with that, we could probably get a hold of a schedule as well. But that's really going to help with that routine consistency and just kind of that, muscle memory. But definitely.
And another piece of checking in on the learning process is to ensure that you have access to your students' learning tools. We know Schoology is our learning management system where assignments are held. I know in the lower grades it might be Seesaw as well, so ensure that you have access to those. In addition, Parent Portal is where you can access their grades, and then ask about their notebooks. What notes are they taking during the day? And so the purpose of this is to monitor their engagement, their participation, and their progress. And you may not be with them all day to know how they're progressing. So a lot of times, I'll even ask my niece who just started kindergarten, "What'd you learn in school?" And she says, "Oh, math." And I know it's more than math, or more than recess. So it'd be helpful to look at the newsletter or the pacing guide to really understand what they did in class. So instead of how was math or what did you learn in class today, you could say, "Oh, I noticed you are learning how to round with a number line. Can you tell me more about that? How comfortable do you feel with rounding on a number line? Can you show me how to round on a number line?" And have that little sacred time with your student to really see what they're understanding or what they misunderstood in class. And then you can contact the teacher, whichever way that goes. So again, ensure that you're connected to PowerSchool, Schoology, School Messenger, and then have them show you your classwork and homework. And so the next piece we're going to talk about is how to support the productive struggle. So when I was just saying have them show you their homework and classwork, doesn't necessarily mean do the work for them, right? And I know a lot of times we don't want to see our kids struggle, but Emily's going to chat about how this is beneficial to them.
Yeah, like Brooke, you hit it like right on the head, right? So we are in this new crazy place. We can't sit next to somebody all day, every day. We need to know that our kid is learning though. So even if you don't, like with your own schedule, have time to like check in on pacing or check in on everything, by asking your student maybe to like see their notebook or just to show you one thing they did today, all of a sudden like opens up that conversation about learning at your house. Because I have a sister that is the total opposite of me. And I would come home from school and like share everything that happened, right? And like share new learning and facts and whatever. And that's like who I am as a learner. And I have a sibling who, how was school today? Fine. and would just move on. Did you learn anything? No. But like asking those like probing questions, like, well, what, tell me about, why did you draw this shape? Like, things like that can just build that like learning within your kid. But let's talk about productive struggle, because I think this is what hurts our parent hearts the most right now, is when we're walking through and teachers are asking questions and our kid doesn't know the answer, or our kid gives the wrong answer. We so want to swoop in and sit next to them and help them, which is what we do, right? We want to help them and learn in that way. But what we're finding then is if we give kids every single answer, or whenever a teacher is asking a question and we like shout the answer from the other room so they can do it, we're enabling them to not struggle and learn on their own. And struggle has almost, I think, a bad taste in our mouths, right? We don't want our kids to struggle. We want them to like feel successful and feel like learning is this amazing, fun thing. But in order to get learning to be this amazing, fun thing, we have to grow them as learners. And you realize how much you love learning when you like grapple with a situation. So some suggestions on how to kind of help your kids overcome that, and not be dependent on you, because every time a teacher asks a question, you don't want them to run to you. You don't got time for that. And also your kid won't learn if they're doing that, right? Other than learning like adults have the answers, I don't have the answers. And that's the last thing we want kids to know. But if they're working through something like, and the teacher's helping somebody else, or they're working through something and somebody's not next to them, have your kid make a star next to it, or write down like that I need help with this later. And that way they grapple for a minute, or they kind of work through something first before like they run out and get you, or before they like had the other flip side of it, like an emotional breakdown. Like, I will definitely help you, but I need you to work a little bit on this first. And it is so hard, I know. But allowing them to try first and then helping is going to be huge, especially when we do transition back into the real classroom one day. And you have one adult with 25 kids again, as opposed to everybody having a one-on-one alongside of them. Just that is going to be huge in that learning process piece, but it takes time. Yeah, Brooke, did you want to add on and piggyback?
I was just thinking about like being in the classroom as a teacher. We struggle with the same thing, where kids are just starting to learn a new concept and we want to give them all the information to help them be successful. But we have to learn, and we're teaching our teachers how to do this too, have to learn wait time and let them, trying to find another word for struggle, but let them grapple with it for a little bit, and then maybe ask like, what questions do they have? Because then that's going to grow their growth mindset. They're going to keep trying, and that really helps, I guess, long-term learning in that way.
100%.
Yeah.
So we've set up the learning environment a little bit. We talked about the learning process a little bit. We talked about letting students grapple with things a little bit. I think we're going to let Alexis pause the recording right now and just kind of open it up for questions. I know we have a big question, and I want to hear Brooke's thoughts on this too, because I have thoughts as well, from Joseph about what's better, pinning the teacher or letting his kids see the whole class. This is not, and maybe Brooke totally disagrees with me, and that's fine, but I don't think this is going to be the answer you want. If he is capable, and I don't know what your kid's iPad skills look like yet, if he's capable of figuring out how to pin the teacher when she's talking and seeing the whole class during like community time, like morning meeting time, or different pieces like that, then I'd suggest letting him go back and forth. I'm guessing though, by your question, we're not at that place yet, which is 100% totally fine, because this is hard and these are new fine motor skills and everything else we're learning. Then I would probably suggest pinning the teacher at this point. Brooke, is that what you were going to say? Yes.
The only, I guess there's an extra skill that they would need to have is learn how to pin the LAMPS teachers as well. So when the teacher leaves the classroom, the new teacher that comes in is not pinned, so they can't see who's there, where the teacher is.
Right.
So just be learning how to pin, unpin, and who to pin. But that's what I would suggest, is pin whatever teacher is in the classroom.
Yeah. And that is, it's hard. And like, I mean, we do need to, like, it's hard and so frustrating right now. I have to keep reminding myself that this is only day 15 of this. And we're little people forming brand new habits. So I think it will get better for him and for you. But just, that practicing, or even if he watches you every time you pin it and starts to try on his own, might be helpful. But 100%.
And we'd love to answer questions and also hear what has worked for you guys with setting up the learning environment, with checking in on progress, and how are you supporting the productive struggle too.